Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss about the new Walrus operator that was introduced in the Python 3.8 version. Let's get started. So why the name? Why is it called Walrus? That's probably what you're wondering right now. Well, the operator looks something like this. If you look at it closely, it sort of resembles like the eyes and tusks of a walrus. So maybe if you rotate like that, it's a bit of a stretch, but that's what we're calling it. That's the reason it's called the Walrus operator. Now, what does it do exactly? So it's a new way of doing assignment in Python, or as the Python documentation shows it, it's a new syntax that assigns values to variables as part of a larger expression. So that's what a Walrus operator is. Let's see that in action with a couple of examples. Let's start with a simple if condition. Say you have a list of numbers 1 to 5 and you want to have a condition saying if the length of the numbers is more than a certain value, you just want to print it's too long and want to print the length, right? So it's a simple program as you would expect, and in this particular case, as you can see, we're getting list is too long. But one thing we're doing here, if you have noticed, is we're calculating the length of this list twice, once here and another time here. Now, as programmers, we're all about the dry principle. Do not repeat yourself. So instead of having to do this twice, it would be good if you do it once, especially if the list is quite large. Calculating the length of it might take a lot of time. So what we can try here is we can just extract this out into a variable, say length, and we can use that, and as you'd expect, that works as well. So we have calculated the length once and put it into this variable, and then we have just used that everywhere else. This is perfectly Pythonic, but we are bringing out a new variable length just so we could print it here. Right? Wouldn't it be better if we could somehow remove this line but still be able to calculate only once? Well, enter Walrus. So we can simplify this with the Walrus operator, something like this. So we can take that. So the Walrus operator looks something like this, and we put that in brackets. We'll see why the brackets are important, and we'll take that off. So this is how the syntax looks with the Walrus operator present. So what we're doing here is we're calculating the length of this numbers list once, and we're putting it into this length variable. So this is our new assignment operator. And once we put that in, we can use length as any other variable. You have access to it throughout the rest of the code. So, and that's what we have here. And just to show that it works as expected, let me run this. And you can see we get the exact same output. So this simplifies the if condition that we had before. So the reason we need to have the brackets here is because the comparative operator here, which is greater than, has a higher priority than the Walrus operator here. That is, if I remove the brackets, for example, what you will see is, so you will see that the length actually gets the value true rather than the value 4, because this whole thing gets executed. So it's as if we are doing this, which is obviously not what we want. So that's why we need to have this bracket so that we can separate this out into its own expression. So this is how we can use the Walrus operator here to simplify and make the code shorter. Now, is it more readable than before? Well, that's a choice. It's up to you to decide if it makes sense to do that. Let's look at a few more examples to see how the Walrus operator can be used. The next example I want to show you is using a list comprehension. Say we have a list of numbers like this, and we want to print out the squares of those numbers only if the square number is an even number. So we would do something like this with the list comprehension. So we first calculate the squares, and then we're calculating the even squares with the if condition. That is, we're checking if it is even, and if it is even, we're printing it. So if I run this, we should expect to see 4 and 16 as the output here. We are interested in printing just the even square. So this entire calculation is probably not useful. So we can actually simplify this by taking this away completely and by doing this. Now we have the exact same functionality as before, but with one line less. And again, as we see, the output remains the same. Now, again, the problem here is we are doing the same computation, which is the squaring of the number n times n twice. We are doing it here and also here. Now, again, wouldn't it be easier if we only had to do it once and use it everywhere else? Well, again, Walrus is our friend here. So we can use a Walrus operator in a list comprehension as well. It would look something like this. So we can say square is n times n, and then I can just print the s here. So what we're doing here is, when the first time when we square this number, we're putting that into this variable called s, and then we are just printing that out. We're just returning that as part of the list comprehension, and that gives us the even squares. And again, if we run this, we will see the exact same output as before, which is 4 and 16. So this is another way of using Walrus operators in the list comprehension. As you might have guessed it already, the reason for existence of the Walrus operator is to minimize the number of computations you have to do. Or whenever you have to do some computation twice, you can just use the Walrus operator to simplify it by doing it only once and using that expression over and over again. Now let's take another example, which is when we're trying to call a function. It's not really a dedicated example of its own, but I just want to show that this is also possible. Let's say you have a function, something like this, which is get value from the database. So, which right now, to keep it simple, I've kept it as 10. Maybe you can assume that it takes a lot of time to get that value out of the database. So you call that function and say you have to create another list out of it, which is basically half of it and the double of it. So if you run this, you will see the output 5, 10, 20, as you would expect. Now, using Walrus operator, we can actually simplify this further by putting this x assignment in the expression itself. So the way we can do that is by putting it right here. And obviously we have to put it in brackets, otherwise the value of x would be this divided by 2, which is not what we want. So this puts the value of get value from db, which is 10, in x, and then divides that by 2, so that will be 5, and then you have 10 and 20 after that. So if I run it, that's what you should see, and that's what you get as you expect. So that's another way that you can use Walrus operators to simplify the computation that you do. Another nice use for a Walrus operator would be when you want to use with while loops, especially with infinite while loops. Say you are trying to ask user for an input, which is we're asking for some secret word, and until they give that secret word, you will basically be looping, saying they have entered this and try again, right? So it would look something. Say I give blowfish, but that's not the secret it's expecting. So it's asking us, it says you have entered this, asks us to try again, and puts it back into the prompt. Now if I enter swordfish, which is the password it expects, it just stops. So that's what we have here, basically your typical infinite loop. Now using a Walrus operator, we can simplify this as well. So the way that would work is basically you take whatever is the input here, we can take that, put that as a while condition, and then you can take this whole thing, compare it with the value of swordfish, right? Quite simple, right? So what we've done here is we're basically asking the user for this every time until we match swordfish. It basically simplifies the code quite a bit. Now if we run this, it again looks the same way. So if I say catfish, obviously that's not the correct password. Then we got pufferfish, that's not it either. And finally, if it says swordfish, it will exit. It will put us out of this. And this is how you can simplify infinite while loops using the Walrus operator. For the final example, I have a for loop. So we can use Walrus operator within a for loop as well. So say you have a list of people like this. So we have name and age. Not everyone in this list has a name, right? So maybe some of the names are empty. So what we want to do here is we're trying to loop through a list here, and we're basically printing we have the person name if the name is not empty. So this looks something like this. So it says we have Adam, we have Adriana. Now this can be simplified with the Walrus as well. So as you see, we're clearly calling person of name twice. So even though this the person is a dictionary and the lookup is quite fast, we are basically calling the same thing 2 times. So instead, we can use a Walrus operator to simplify this as well. So what we can do is, I can say name is person, and I can just get that name right here. That would do exactly the same thing as you would expect. And there you go. So again, we've printed, we have Adam, we have Adriana. We have basically taken out the second call by using a Walrus operator. That's how you can use Walrus operator. We have seen 5 different examples of how you can use the Walrus operator, but the bottom line is it's all the same, which is to prevent doing some operation twice. So that's where Walrus operator comes. Now, Walrus operator, when it was introduced, it was quite controversial because some people thought it would obscure the readability of Pythonic code. So as long as you don't overcomplicate it, I think Walrus operator definitely has a place in the Python ecosystem. Then that's all we have about the Walrus operator for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.